Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Vixen Voice. I'm going to warn you today is going to be fun because our guest, Meg Rentschler, I have been on her podcast, The Star Coach Show, and it was one of the most fun guesting appearances I ever had. You're going to see her energy is amazing, and if you know me, I have a lot of energy, so buckle your seatbelt for today's episode, but we're going to have a great time. So, Meg is, besides being incredibly cool, fun, and energetic, she is also a clinical social worker and a professional certified coach. She has an endeavor, a focus on results executive coaching, where she works with leadership across the country. That's pretty awesome. And Meg, I'm sure you meet amazing people. And as I mentioned, she is the host of the Star Coach Show. So tune in if you're a coach or not. I promise you'll get great tips and you will be entertained for sure. So, Meg, welcome.
Thank you so much, April. I've been looking forward to spending time with you again because we had so much fun before. We had to do it again.
I know it's kind of crazy. So I get my hair and makeup done the morning of podcast, so it's like one less thing to worry about. And my artist has become a friend, and we were just laughing so hard today. And then I get to have my first episode with you, and I'm like, gosh, I'm a lucky girl. This is my job, right? I just get to hang out with like amazing women. It's so great.
Yeah, it's really a blessing. As you said, doing the work that we do, we get to meet people from all over. Doing our podcast, we get to meet people from around the world. Working with the leaders and
Yeah.
the coaches I do, it's also around. It's just so, it's like, how did I get to be so blessed? Thank you.
I know. But you know what we're going to talk about today, Mag, and I want you to share your story first. I love the work you do. You wanted to chat today about shattering like the limits that entrepreneurs put on themselves because this conversation is critical to what we're talking about today because all of us have the ability to create our dream life. All of us have the ability to wake up every morning and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is my life. And so, if you're feeling kind of stuck right now, or maybe have the blahs or second guessing what you do, pay attention. Stay with us for this full 45 minutes to an hour because Meg and I are really going to get into those limiting beliefs that are probably holding you back or keeping you in that rut. So, before we go there, Meg, I'd love to ask you, it's your first time on the Vixen Voice. So, I always like to ask, can you share a pivotal story? I mean, I know you're this amazing firecracker of a woman, and I love that you're wearing red because it's so appropriate for your personality. So thank you for bringing it today. But obviously we've all evolved to who we are today. So what's a
Mhm.
pivotal story in your life or in your journey that really helped define the woman sitting here before us today?
Well, thanks for that question. I think it's beautiful that you add that to, share perspective on each one of your guests. And as I was thinking about that, I thought about how much I've always been driven. Actually, since 13 years old, when I read an article about runaway children, I was like, I am going
Oh,
to work with kids to kind of anchor them into who they can be and create safety. And that's what led me into clinical social work and the work that I did for years as a therapist in practice. And then I also think that as we are service providers, we absolutely have to tap into what is happening for us when we're doing the work that we're doing. And so
yes.
with that, what ended up happening was over the course of time, over the 20 plus years that I was a therapist, my clients started to sort of transition in my business. I started working with a lot of employee assistance programs, a lot of adults that were absolutely overwhelmed in their work situations. They were either
Mhm.
being asked to be leaders without being given the toolkit on how to be leaders. Just because you're a great individual performer doesn't mean that that you know how to lead people, or maybe
Yes.
being led in organizations that just were not healthy places for people to work. And so the pivot for me was is being a therapist the thing that I want to be anymore? Am I being reactive? What could I do to be proactive? And that's where
Hmm.
I made a decision. What else could I do to bring my skill set forward, which is something we're going to talk about in shattering the beliefs, but or shattering limiting beliefs. But I say I have the skill set, but is this the place that I want to be utilizing that skill set? And in my search and paying attention to what lit me up and what excited me, that's where I found
Hmm.
executive coaching and thought, what if? What if I went into organizations and helped leaders better understand what is the toolkit that I need to work well with people, to communicate effectively, to
Hmm.
empower the people that I work with? Um, and then also, how can I help organizations as a whole become healthier places to work? What happened with that, April, that was so pivoting was that
Yeah.
I was able to really tap into that passion. I felt my energy shift. I loved being a therapist for all those years that I was a therapist, but I had to pay attention to when it was time to make the pivot for me. And that was about
Hmm.
15 years ago. And I've been doing this work as a coach and a coach instructor, which is a whole different story about how windows open sometimes when
Yeah,
you
I
don't
love
even know
that.
they're going to be there. That just, so now I like bring this huge energy every single day to what I do because I love what I do.
So I love your story so much, and it's funny because I'm on my fourth career technically, but when I pivoted from being a lawyer to a financial advisor, which I had a little bit of time teaching English in there because I lived in Europe, but I love how you said reactive versus proactive because I was a litigator and I did litigation for Fortune 500 companies like defense litigation. And then I did construction law and insurance law. So, like, I was always inheriting a problem, right? As a litigator, you get things when they're already messed up and you're trying to
Oh,
figure
yeah,
out
here's
how
a
to work
mess.
it
Here,
out, right?
fix it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Hey, we wrote crappy contracts. We're arguing. Can you fix it? Right? Like, so anyway, so that was my job. And intellectually, I loved what I did as a litigator. It was very stimulating intellectually. But as I got older, I wanted to fill my soul more. So when I got introduced to financial planning with my dad and retirement planning, I was like, you mean we can plan for people's future so they can go into retirement and be happy? And
Happy?
so I love the way you put it, reactive versus proactive, because I made that same switch too. I was like, oh, cool, I can help people plan to be happy instead of like inheriting their problems, right? And so
Right.
I can totally relate to that energy shift you're talking about. It's completely different. And then you talked about you knew when it was right for you. I'd love to dig into that more because I'm sure there are
Hmm.
many women listening who are maybe, still in their corporate job and potentially. Oh, I just realized that my mic is not plugged in. So hopefully we're getting good sound here. Awesome. We might have a little hiccup. Perfect. So, as I was saying, there are plenty of women, who are potentially listening saying
Hmm.
that, hey, I'd love to I have a passion. I want to leave corporate, or yeah, I'm ready to make a pivot. But so many people get stuck in fear or the fear of the
Right.
unknown or imposter syndrome, which I know is what we're going to get into today. But I'd love to hear from you. How did you deal with that? Because I know for me, leaving law wasn't that hard because large entities were my clients for the most part, right? But when I left financial planning to become a coach, I was leaving clients behind and a team behind.
Right.
And so that was the hardest part for me. And so I wanted to transition where I felt everyone was going to be taken care of to the best of the ability, but my calling to do something else was so strong that I
Right.
had to go, right? So talk to us about that transition for you because I think it's very, sometimes people look at us and think, "Oh, you just hop from this to this." And it's not that easy. easy. Like it takes a lot of
Right.
planning, it takes a lot of thought, intentionality, and kind of kicking our own selves in the butt and getting rid of our limiting beliefs, right? So talk to us about when you knew you had to make the switch and maybe what steps you took or what work you had to do on yourself.
Thank you for that. So it's interesting because I believe that we don't usually make a change until either the discomfort of our current situation outweighs the
Mhm.
discomfort of making a change, or that there's just something that is so exciting and motivating that it's worth sort
Yeah.
of stepping into the discomfort of change to do that. So I think a couple things, because in order to make this transition the way that I wanted to make it, I wanted to be trained as an executive coach. I wanted, so it involved
Hmm.
a huge financial commitment
Yep.
to go to the program that I chose. So I had to get my husband on board. Now the interesting thing about that, often we walk through life with partners and with other people who support us, or that we have to deal with their fears and concerns as well. My husband, I adore. He has been a corporate guy forever. And so when I
Yeah.
went into entrepreneurship as a therapist in private practice back in 1990, he was so uncomfortable with this whole entrepreneur thing, right? Like he's like, could you not just get a job? I left working for a
Yes.
large hospital, um, in a, I was part of the adolescent psychiatric unit. So
Wow.
he
Yeah.
was like, really, you're going to leave and go into business for yourself? So part of that is that you also have to navigate who are the people around you, and what are their
Yes.
comfort levels. So he supported me going into private practice. That was for years. And then I'm coming to him and saying, you know what? I think I want to engage in this other thing. So I need, several $1,000s to go through this program. And I'm
Yeah.
going to be going to school every night for 3 nights a week for a year. And, can you monitor the kids? And so all those kinds of things that you had. And then in my mind, I was, I've built this private practice. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It was a lot of,
Mhm.
working with insurance companies, getting on their panels, being well known, working with the employee assistance programs. So I had to, really believe that this difference would
Mhm.
create a difference. But then, like you said, I had a full practice of clients. So
Yeah.
part of that was also not wanting to leave anybody behind. I gave myself a
Mhm.
long runway to begin to diminish the numbers of therapy clients and increase my coaching clients. I still had some therapy clients that I had to, I thought, well, we'll just kind of wait until they're done with therapy. But that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes people need longer
Yeah.
care or whatever.
Yeah.
So I also made some specific moves to begin. So I changed my environment. As a therapist, I worked in a hospital district in an office with four other therapists.
Mhm.
When I began to look at this change, I moved my office into a business district that was sort of a executive suite. So I had my own place, and my clients, my therapy clients, could still come see me there because it was my own office. But it was
Right.
it was a different kind of, so even that began to help with the mind shift. Like I'm moving from a sort of medical therapy focus into a business coaching focus, even by my environment. But it's scary because,
Mhm.
you've got these things like I'd already built a business as a therapist. I had to like stop that and build something else. The scariest
Yeah.
part was writing letters to all the insurance companies saying, I don't want to be on your panel anymore. Because you have to work so hard to get on those panels that when it was
Yeah.
like, are you really going to do this, Meg? If you're really going to do it. And it was like, yeah, I got to send all these letters out. And then I had to mindset shift from, holy crud, what did I do, to how liberating is that? How
Yep.
delightful. I've made a decision and I'm going to fully lean into this decision and build myself and my business in a different light. And there was a lot of, and I think I had to really honor some of the things that are important to me. It was really important to
Hmm.
me to pick a great program, to really learn,
Hmm.
to practice, to do things like mastermind with other people, to sink
Hmm.
into that new experience fully so that I was showing up as my best for my clients.
Yeah. No, I love that. You and I are built similarly. For my coaching certification, it's like 4 full days, like 11 hours on Zoom, my high performance coaching certification. And then we're supposed to recertify every 2 years, where I'm like, nope, every year, because they let you do it every year if you want, right? And so I'm like, every year
Hmm.
I'm doing it. And every year I'm doing, the coaching sessions because you want to be the best at what you do, delivering the
Yes.
best to your clients. And so I can appreciate that. I love it. And I love, thank you for sharing the thoughtfulness you put into transitioning and how you did step by step, right? So for me, I knew April of 2020 I needed to make a pivot, and it wasn't fully realized till March 15th of 2023. And so, I kind of had coaching as my side hustle for a long time, which was crazy because I was running two other companies. But that's when you become really good at
You
time
are a
management, which is
powerhouse.
what I coach now.
Yes.
But yeah, it was like for me, I was, 3 days. I started one day working on the coaching business, like Fridays, the other 4 days on the other two businesses. Then it went like 3 and 2, and then 2.5 and 2.5. And I was lucky I had a team that, the clients
Right.
were still being taken care of in the financial practice. But it wasn't me there all the time
Right.
doing everything. But it does take some time. It's interesting because I always like hesitate when, on LinkedIn, I'm like, when do I put that the Vixen Gathering began? Because it really began
Yeah.
April of 2020, right? But, I didn't
Right.
go full time till much longer. So if you're in that case, many of us take a while to transition, but I love this. I want to dig into the limiting beliefs that we chatted about, Meg, because I just wrapped up a 3-day abundance challenge where we're dealing with limiting beliefs when it comes to money. Oh my goodness. And seeing the shift in the women attending just in 3 days, an hour each. And also with the community, the power of
Right.
community, right? When you're coaching, and just seeing the shift was so amazingly beautiful. Like I'm still on a high from it. And then, I do a 12-week coaching for aspiring entrepreneurs and startups. So again, almost everyone in that group is still in corporate, doing the new gig on the side, trying to get the income to even up, or at least to a place where
Right.
they feel comfortable making the leap. And one made the leap last week, so we all celebrated her. But
Oh, how
I think if you
exciting.
isn't that fun? Yeah, she did it earlier than planned, and another one is ahead of her goal too. But you can imagine, when you're going through that, if you have a community or if you know how to deal with your limiting beliefs, it really speeds up that learning curve. So let's dig
Right.
in. I'd love to hear from you. When you're working with entrepreneurs, what are a lot of, I don't know, what's a common limiting belief, or where would you like to get started that we can chat about?
So I think that when we choose to make a change, we get
Yes.
so caught up in the difference. We get so caught up in now this is new that I think one of our limiting, actually, sort of a paradigm that we fall into is, but this is new. So
Hmm.
I've trained over 2,000 coaches to bring their coaching forward. Coaches tend to come into, and anybody listening who's going to go into their own business, you didn't hash out of an egg yesterday. You have
Right.
been doing things and learning things and building skills and building talents. Many are transferable. But once we think, oh, now I'm a new business owner, or now I'm a coach instead of an HR professional, or a whatever, it's like I'm brand new. Yeah, there's a piece of that that's new. But I think that where we need to really recognize our potential. We need to recognize what is it that
Mm-hmm.
that we're passionate. What is it that like we can continue to anchor into that led us to this decision to begin with? We were motivated by something. We were driven by something.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, like how do we anchor into that so that every time those niggling voices come up, who the heck do you think you are doing this? What is it that like it was so safe doing this other thing? And this might feel so risky. Well, but there's so what was your passion? And what are those skills and talents and the the potential that you have that you're bringing forward to apply to this new thing?
Mm-hmm.
And often I think the limiting belief is, oh, but this is a new thing, so now I'm fresh and green. And yeah, there's some great things about it being fresh and green, and you're bringing things over. So I would say that really and truly remembering the potential and the elements that you already have. I mean, look at April. She moved from lawyer to, well, little stint of teacher, but then, financial advisor. You didn't leave everything behind that you
No.
learned in your profession as lawyer to move into financial advisor. You might be doing something different, but the essence of who you were came with you. And I think that sometimes we forget that when we're venturing into something new.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I'm a lot more detail oriented than many visionaries, and that goes back to being a litigator, right? If I missed a
Mm-hmm.
period in a 40-page brief, I was probably losing my job. Like I was like
Wow.
very
Mm-hmm.
conditioned not to make mistakes, which is a trauma you have to overcome, by the way,
I was
and
gonna
try
say
not
there's
to
a bit of an
transfer that
occupational hazard
expectation
there. Yeah.
onto your team, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the challenge for me, one thing I had to learn as an entrepreneur is I had such high expectations of my team because that was the environment I grew up in, right? Like that was my
Right.
first job. So I had to realize, okay, everything's not a law firm where our clients are Fortune 500 companies and we have such high stakes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that was a huge growing lesson for me as a leader, like to understand like that I had to shift my expectations and that I had kind of grown up in a not very healthy environment and to not carry that forward with me to like future teams. And it took a while. I mean, there are
Mm-hmm.
hiccups. We go back to nature, but what's interesting for me is, you said that little blip as a teacher, and I agree. Like, I think I got paid 12 euros an hour for teaching English when I was used to making six figures. So that was very like challenging for me personally. However, it was a phenomenal experience because I was coaching, I was teaching English to executive lawyers. I taught at the huge publishing house, Berlusconi's publishing house. Like I spent a whole day there. So I'm teaching adults English, right, that they need for their job. So
Right.
there's a whole different
Right.
motivation. And to teach, you have to become a phenomenal listener. And I didn't understand how physical listening was because as a lawyer, the part of the job I did didn't require that much listening. And so I got very cued into listening, and then that made me a really good financial planner because I listened to my clients, I heard everything. It
Mm-hmm.
made me a very good coach and consultant, and it's made me a great interviewer because I hear everything my guests are telling me, right? And
Right.
so I love what you're saying, and I one assignment I give to my clients when they're in transition is go back to every position you had, and I want a little vignette or story about what your greatest takeaway was, and I want you to turn it into a story of how you serve your new clients, right? So they actually go through that exercise to see the value because we're on the same page. I love you started with passion, and I always say purpose And then remember, you've been successful before. So, how do we take these traits
Right.
that made you successful before and implement them into this new situation? And I see the relief, when you're working with clients. I'm sure you see that too. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm not that awkward 12-year-old that I feel like right now being a new business
Right.
owner. I actually have some, I've actually evolved past that, but I do feel that way.
Right. And then what do? So yeah, it's going to be clunky. Anytime we do a new skill or we
Yes.
do a new thing, it's going to be clunky, but it's about the journey. It's about learning from everything we do. And so one of the other limiting beliefs is if it's not perfect, I can't put it out there. Or if it's not
Mhm.
exactly the way that it needs to be yet, then I've got to wait and fine tune and fine tune. And
Yes.
my
No.
response to business owners about that is you're not going to get feedback and you're not going to really see what needs to be tweaked unless you put it out there. So
Yes.
the destination isn't even perfection to me. It's like,
Mm.
and that limiting belief of it has to be perfect first means that people who need whatever it is that you're offering, whatever your service is, whatever your product is, they're not getting access to it if you're waiting and waiting and waiting until it's perfect.
Uh,
So I think that the
yep.
limiting belief there is um, I'm not good enough or it's not good enough unless it's perfect. And I would say that, in fact, what you have to offer, that passion, that purpose, that
Hmm.
those skills and talents that we know that you already have, there are people who need that. And they're
Yes.
being underserved by you as you wait to reach perfection. So getting it out there is better than getting it out there perfect.
I agree, and perfection is a downward spiral. I just had this conversation with a client, and I'm like, I am happiest when I'm coaching and like doing my podcasting, right? So if I were waiting to get all my programs perfect, I wouldn't be coaching, so I wouldn't be getting that dopamine burst of helping people, right? And then I'd be
Mm-hmm.
second guessing myself a lot more. But because I'm already coaching and having success, then I'm like, okay, we just got to figure this other stuff out. But if you're so
Right.
focused on getting it perfect, and my client's the same way, she wants to be serving, and I'm like, go find a client and start serving, and then your confidence is going to go up, your comfort level with yourself, you're going to feel good about yourself, and then the rest becomes easier. Not easy, but
Right.
easier, because you're not in this when you're waiting for perfection, you're like in this tunnel vision, right? And you're not seeing all this
Mm-hmm.
opportunity around you that you're missing. And I love how you talked about you're not serving people during that time, because in my experience, most people that leave jobs or make career changes, it's really purpose driven because they want to make an
Mm-hmm.
impact. Also, probably they want freedom of time and freedom of money,
Right.
but like they want to do it in an impactful way, right? So I agree. If you're frozen in perfection, you can't be making an impact. And I had a business coach come into my financial planning firm, and what he taught us was in the tech industry, like Microsoft and Apple, the reason they have upgrades is because nothing's perfect when they put it out, right? And he was like,
Right.
if they waited till it was perfect, they would go bankrupt. And so in the tech industry, I don't know if they use this anymore, but it's called ship the code. Hey, you know what? It's 85%. Let's ship the code
Let's
and
go.
we'll send out bug fixes and updates and we'll fix it as we go. And so if people think about that in their business, it's the same concept, right? Like you said, you're not going to have it perfect because you don't have feedback from clients. You're not in the
Right.
hearts, minds, dreams, hopes, and fears of your ideal client yet because you're not serving them. And then as they go along, you add parts to your program that answers their questions, serves them better, etc. And then it gets better. So, but I don't know why that idea of shipping the code. I was like, you're right. Nothing's ever right in technology. And these are the largest companies on the planet, right? So if they can ship
Right.
the code without it being perfect, why does little old me have to get it perfect? Think
Have to,
about
or do I even know? So let's say I hold off for
yes.
months thinking that I'm making it perfect for my client, and then I get it
Yes.
out there And it's still not, because that's when I realize, oh, you didn't need it quite like this. You needed it like this. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't allow them to consume it.
Yes, yeah, I love it. No, it's so right. I actually, my 12-week program, I had 6 women go through it for free as a beta test, even though my team was like, "You're
Mm-hmm.
crazy, let's charge them something." I was like, you know what? Here's 3 things I would like. I want your feedback along the way. So besides your homework every week, I would like feedback. Like, and then, if you feel you've gotten value, I'd love a testimonial at the end. And every one of them gave me
Mm-hmm.
feedback and gave me a testimonial. And I mean, some of them like doubled their revenue in that time. So they got tremendous value. And
Right.
then I knew it worked. So when I went into the next session, I was like, okay, this is great. We're going to make a difference in people's lives.
So your confidence allowed you to engage with people at a much different level. You had results that you could talk about. You
Yep.
were able to know, yes, I was right on about this, and oh, I need to tweak this. So that time and energy
Yes.
and effort you gave to those 6 was well worth the investment, because you were no longer, it wasn't theoretical, it was practical at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, you're going to constantly tweak things, right? So then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, what's the right number of people in my program? How do we show up? At first they were getting one-on-ones with me. Well, that's not sustainable for the long haul. So you start understanding how it fits in with the other parts of your business. And I think that
Right.
everything new you create, you have to go through these steps, and it's not going to be perfect. So I love that. All right, let's get back to limiting beliefs. So it's new. I like how you stated that. So, I mean, I know we've talked about imposter syndrome and all these other ideas, but I
Mm-hmm.
love how you honed on to the fact the limiting belief is that this is new and everything's new, because you're so spot on with that. That's what so many people think, and they get frozen in the newness,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're high performers and used to being successful. They don't really
Right.
know how to act when they're suddenly in this clunky adolescent phase again, learning something new.
Well, and then if we go into like common cognitive distortions, which are part of our limiting beliefs, then things
Yep.
like emotional reasoning comes in. If I feel this way, it must be true. Or we start shooting on ourselves, or we start creating that all or nothing kind of thought, that black or white, and not living in the gray anymore. So all these kinds
Yeah.
of cognitive distortions that kick in when we are in a place of discomfort, and we just need to realize that everything our mind does is to try to protect us. It's there
Yes.
for, our limiting beliefs are there to, because our mind believes that that's how we're going to stay safe. And we
That
need
is
to
clue.
then lean into our purpose and passion to say, okay, I get it and I appreciate it. And it's sort of like acknowledging, okay, I get why you're there, but what else could be true? And what else could be true? And really kind of, because it's all made up. Our beliefs are, they're based upon our experiences and our model of the world, the way that we've experienced things, the things we've been taught.
Hmm.
However, not all of it serves us. And so if we can just acknowledge that, yes, that could be true, but what else could be true? And then where do I want to live in that? What do I want for myself, and what am
Hmm.
I willing to do? So from that, it sort of becomes, what am I willing to learn?
Hmm.
How am I going to continue to develop and grow? We were both talking about the fact that when we decided to be coaches, we said, okay, what do we need to do to develop
Hmm.
personally and professionally to make this vision come true? So part of shattering limiting beliefs is acknowledging them, asking what else could be true, but then what skills do I need? What do I need to put in my toolbox to be able to effectively make that transition? And sometimes what we're thinking, the limiting beliefs that we have, might have some some evidence to support them. So, what do I know about X, Y, and Z? What do I know about being a business owner? Well, maybe I
Mhm.
need to hire somebody to work with to help me learn this part that I might not know as well, but I want to lean into this purpose and passion. So, what do I need
Mhm.
to do to bridge that gap?
Well, and I think when you get past the limiting beliefs and you get more comfortable in your new skin, then you can
Mm-hmm.
tap back into your intuition because you can't run your
Mm,
business fully by intuition, but it should be your guide. And then you use your brain, like you said, to figure out what tips, what do I need to do? What skill set do I
yeah.
need to do? What should I develop? Because for me personally, I mean, when I was still had my financial planning company, a woman reached out to me who'd been doing masterminds successfully for 15 years. She's amazing, like this incredible human being. And she was like, I'm looking for other coaches to do my mastermind around the country. And I was like, awesome, cool. Like she was recruiting me before I was even fully in and she was training us, etc. And it was almost like a guaranteed six figures when I made the leap. So I was like, okay, like that part of my brain though on safety was like,
Yeah.
oh, this sounds great. Cool. I got halfway through the training and then I had to apologize to her and I was like, "Look, I'm happy to pay you more for your time because we had paid a nominal amount for that time." I said, "But
Mm-hmm.
this just isn't right for me. I don't feel right." She let us blend in our own material, but I didn't feel right coaching someone else's material. Like there was so much
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to coach on and develop. Now I do
Right.
have certifications and I use some, material from that, but I just I realized that even though it was the safe path, it was not the right
Right.
path for me and where I was going to be fully engaged and fully serving. And so I ended up backing out of that. And like I said, I was just like, I'm happy, to compensate you for your time because I know you're not going to make money off this because in my opinion, we always want these things to be a win-win situation. And,
Of
I
course.
greatly admired this woman and the opportunity, but had I not been comfortable enough that I could do this, like gotten past my limiting beliefs, like you talked about,
Right.
I never could have made that decision. And it really was the best decision to launch my own mastermind. And, I just love it. Like, I absolutely love it.
Right. But I think that what, I love that you just said was that it is about relationships, and even if we're
Yes.
listening to our intuition and we're tapped into what works for us, that doesn't mean that we have to make other people wrong or that we have to burn
Correct.
bridges. How can we be respectful and engaging and sort of say, well, I love what you're doing. It's not a right fit for me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You keep doing what you're doing. Let me be let me respect your time, your energy, your focus as I make a decision that works better for me. And I think that when we
Yeah.
have limiting beliefs about who am I? This woman is so successful. Who am I to think that I could do something on my own? Or like all those things that we can, the baloney we can feed ourselves sometimes. Now, I do want to say that I totally get that not everybody in the world even has the desire to be an entrepreneur, and that is absolutely fine
Oh,
too.
100%.
Like,
Yep.
but when we feel like that's our purpose and our passion, or that's something that we want to add into, when we begin to compare ourselves to others, one thing I say to the students that I teach across the world is, let's not compare our beginning to somebody else's middle. So they'll say,
Yes.
oh Meg, you ask these questions that just roll off. Well, I've been working with people for over 40 years, either as a therapist or a coach, to help
Yeah.
them affect positive changes in their lives. So yeah, I listen really, really well. And yes, I hear things that maybe you don't, because that is a skill that I have tuned. I'm
Yes.
I'm very curious about people. They say things to me. I told you this when I interviewed you on my show. Like when you'll say something on my show, I'll see a hand go up in my head. Like my audience wants to know more about that because it's like
Agreed.
we're curious about what other people have. I find people to be fascinating. I just think
Yes.
people are amazing, and yet I know that we're all at different levels. And I think
Mhm.
comparison is one of those things that can really block our our creativity, that
Yeah.
belief that I'm less, because anytime I compare myself to somebody, I'm gonna either I have to be better or they have to be, or they're better and I feel worse or whatever. And it's like, yeah, is that really necessary, or what do we all bring uniquely forward?
Yeah. No, I love that. And I mean, I used to, as a financial advisor, it would crack me up because people would be like, well, Warren Buffett says. And I was like, oh, really? So how much money does Warren Buffett have? And they're like, well, I'm like, basically billions. Do you have billions? Maybe we
Yeah.
need different advice than someone who has billions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't
What
think
works
like the
there
risk
might
of
not work here. Yeah.
right. Like if Warren lost half his money, he'd be perfectly fine. If you lose half your money, you're probably going back to work. So let's put this frame of reference. And, it's interesting because I've always been a very unlimited person. But by being a financial advisor and a coach now, it really shows me that yes, when you're learning, you want to be kind of in the same category of other people learning with you. And that's how we've developed our programs at Vixen because, if
Mm-hmm.
I have a woman there leading a team running an 8-figure company versus someone just starting up trying to get to 6 figures, that's two different sets of problems that
two
they need
two
help with,
different sets
right?
of perspective, everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why, like in my community, I really focus on coaches that are relatively new, trying to get that
Right.
traction. I'm not going to have a 30-year coach who is, making 6, 7 figures in that. That's not the purpose of the community. It's not the purpose. They would feel, I
Yeah.
mean, I might bring them in to share with the community, but they're not going to be part of the community kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the point of this is if you're listening in anything in life, be careful who you're asking advice from, right? Make sure, I have this, I chuckle all the time because my parents, when I was a kid, would be like, never take advice from someone who doesn't have a bigger pot than you. Because, my parents grew up in the status generation. So it was like, okay, who's making the most money, right?
Right.
Like 1980s, like, so, but I mean, you think about that too. You want to find somebody that's ahead of where you are, but not light years ahead of
Like
where
years
you
ahead.
are. Like maybe they're 10 or 20% ahead of you so that you can learn from that journey if you're seeking advice or someone in a similar situation. And I find, I work with all female entrepreneurs, and there was a period, it's getting better, but post 2020, I felt women were asking everyone for their opinion. It was almost like they were second guessing themselves, especially in big changes. Well, if you ask for 10 opinions, you might get 10 different opinions. And what have
Pennies.
you done? Have you gotten clarity? No, you've confused yourself more. So, when I have an energy coach, energy and business coach, and as I was starting Vixen, he was like, "Don't tell anyone about your business yet. You're not ready. Like,
That was going
you
to be
need
my
to
next
figure it
thing.
out."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we also have to, you never know. People have their own agendas, even if they don't know that they have their own agendas, they
Yes.
have their own experiences. So, one of the things I wanted to say was that we've got to be very mindful and intentional about who we bring into our sphere of
Hmm.
influence when we're making a decision. Are we, yes, we want to honor what people have to offer. But part of that is, if you have a negative Nelly friend or somebody who just only ever sees the glass half empty, is that really somebody that you want to have these conversations with about what you want to do and how you want to make, like, who are you bringing into your creative circle? And we can be intentional about who we bring in, and we don't have to invite everybody in. And so I just, that, because that can add into our limiting beliefs if we have other people who are very caught into their own limiting beliefs, that can, we can just have a limiting belief fest, right? And is that really what we want to do? So you've got to be mindful of those kinds of things as well.
100%. Your first step is putting those boundaries in to not let people in, right? Like, so I, like, my energy coach used to be like, here's your house, there's a nice porch, there's the white picket fence, right? Like, right now you're letting people in the house. Let's get them on the porch, then we're going to get them in the front yard, and then we're going to get them outside the picket fence. And then you decide who
Right.
comes in the picket fence or not, right? So we would go through this exercise all the time. I've been doing boundary training since 2019, and now I coach on it because I realized I was an open book, and I love that. But by being an open book, you're inviting everyone in,
Everybody
right?
in.
And so
Hmm.
everyone's
And their
coming in and putting all
opinions
their stuff
and
on you. Yes.
right.
I
Right.
love it. So that's first step, in my opinion. And then when you master boundaries, which takes a while, like you want to talk about
Hmm.
something difficult to start, right, Meg? I'm sure you work with
Right.
this with your clients. Like setting boundaries is
Absolutely.
very challenging, and it's a skill set that you should have a strategy and put some work into. But when you get past that, the cool thing is then you get to choose who comes in. So, for example, my COO, we all take our Colby assessment, our print, and we do a lot of coaching, together as a team, how to communicate better, etc. And it's actually her print. Like she's very much about loyalty and security, and so she'll be cynical and question things a lot. And so I'm like, anytime we're looking to hire a third party, a new person, I'm like, I need your cynicism because I think everyone's great, and I just want to give them a
Right.
chance, right? So
I
I'm
just see
like, this
everybody's
is when I
potential.
yeah, because she used to be like, I'm so sorry, I don't want to ask you all these questions. I know you're always positive. I was like, no, 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 that's valuable. Like, in these instances,
That's your
I
role. Yeah.
need your questions and I need you to challenge me. And I think so many times when you're a new business owner, you don't invite that feedback in from your team. And it is a fine line to walk. You have to know what their skill set is and their talents and what they
Hmm.
bring to the table, right? But I always want people around me that have different skill sets than me so that we complement each other or support each other. So, but I agree with you. The first step is keeping people out. And then when you get good at that, you can say, okay, let me get smart about who I let in and how
Right.
I'm letting them in.
Because I don't want people to think that my thing was you only talk with people who agree with you. No, you want to be challenged.
No.
That's part of you want to be challenged. You want to be questioned in a way that you think about what do I really want? What am I doing to get in my way? What can I do to bridge this gap? What is this really the destination that I want? I mean, we want to be challenged about those things, but I think it's a difference between being challenged and somebody just raining on your parade again and again because they're a parade
Yeah.
rainer. I mean, that's just what they do. So then it's like, is that somebody that you invite into the yard, into the porch, into the house?
Yeah, misery loves company. One of the
Yeah.
oldest sayings in the world, right? So we want to be careful with that. Awesome. Meg, before we wrap up, I'm super curious because you dropped something you said when doors open, talking about how you became a coach to coaches. So can you share that story with us quickly? Because I know that's something you added on to your executive coaching, correct?
Right, it was. And so, as I shared, I had this passion to help organizations be healthier, picked a program
Yeah.
that focused on executive coaching. As I was getting ready to end that program, get my certification, I was approached by the director who said, I would love you to join our faculty. Could you create
That's so
a
cool.
cognitive coaching course? And I was like, that wasn't on my radar. I wasn't like, I'm going to leave my therapy practice, build an executive coaching practice, and teach. But it opened, the possibility opened. And then I was like, yeah. Well, that was 15 years ago. I have now had the opportunity to teach over 2,000 students. So think about, or who are now
Wow.
professional coaches. So think about the ripple effect. If my passion was, and my
Yes.
purpose was, I want to help organizations be healthier. Well, I can do that like Megism, like so much. But when I am training and mentoring thousands of coaches to it's like look what's opening up in the world, and all of those coaches are having an impact, whether it's in relationship coaching or executive coaching or whatever coaching they're doing, energy coaching. It is a impact, the ripple. Just so I didn't know that, and I didn't know that I was going to love it so much. So I've recently been kind of looking at where do I want to put my energy, what do I want to
Mm-hmm.
move forward, and not only teaching coaches and helping coaches be the best they can be, but helping leaders use coaching as their leadership style is something that I've been doing a lot of for the last couple years. And
Yeah.
I look at where's the energy that I bring, what's the impact, and where do I have the most fun? It's like helping people step into the power of coaching. But
Yeah.
was I thinking that back in, 2007, 2006 when I was thinking it's time to do a pivot in my therapy? No, I didn't know that I was going to teach and work with coaches and work with leaders, but leaders to coach. I didn't realize all of that, and that was really exciting.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Meg, I want to honor your time, so I'll bring us home here. But before we go, again, it's your first time on the Vixen Voice. So at the Vixen Voice, we're all about making sure we maintain our feminine essence and our feminine energy, right? Knowing we need our masculine sometimes, but not burning out in it. So my question for you is, when do you feel your most feminine? When do you feel your feminine energy flow?
Wow, what a beautiful question. I think I feel it flow most when when I'm with my husband and boys. So I have two
Oh.
adult sons who I don't get to see as much because they're grown up and living their lives, but when we pull together or when they send me
Yeah.
a text or a call to just kind of tap, that's where that sort of I feel blossoming in kind of my love essence and my
Amen.
and just the joy, the pure joy of being a woman, a mom, a wife, and the unit that we sort of built and developed together. That's probably, I mean, when I feel it, it's when I'm with my entire, like, so far we still do
Yeah.
Christmas with like the four of us. Now the
Oh,
boys have two
beautiful.
very serious girlfriends. I'm sure at some point very soon we're probably going to have additions to our family, but at this point we still do Christmas morning with the four of us, and that's just like, I don't, I and not to say that I wouldn't love when we have added people to that, but that's where I would say that.
But right now you're savoring the moment. I love it.
Yes,
So my
exactly.
last no, that's really beautiful. I got chills as you were sharing. So my last question is, what color is your feminine essence?
Ooh. The color that immediately came to mind was lavender.
Oh, I
Um,
love it.
and just sort of the soothing, but also the beauty of that, and just the fragrance of lavender does something for me anyway. But just the
Mm.
it's a bit of a glow. There's a bit of a calm, soothing, but also glow of lavender.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. Well, Meg, as when I was on the Star Coaching Show, this was totally fun. So thank you so much. Thank you for being our guest. It's such an honor to have you on here. I always like to say that the world needs more love. So I like to challenge our listeners. How can they show up in love today to themselves, to others, and for what they do? So, what parting message would you like to give our audience?
So I like to just encourage people to be kind to themselves. That
Mhm.
self compassion leads to being more connected and compassionate with others. So I would just challenge everyone. How can you be kind to yourself today? And how can you extend that kindness to others? And I also want to thank you, April, for being a beautiful host. And you do such a lovely job in this, and are bringing something of real value to your audience. So thank you for inviting me to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you for that feedback. That makes me feel great. Wonderful. Awesome. Well, everyone, I'm sure you see how lovely Meg is. I told you she's a powerhouse, but she has that soft side too. So she's funny and real. I'm sure you want to get more of her, so you can check her out in our show notes. And if you have not subscribed to the Vixen Voice list, these resources show up in your inbox every Tuesday and Thursday, so you don't even have to go looking for them. So Meg has very generously offered a free give me, so check that out in the show notes, and you'll also see where you can find her. Meg, where's your favorite place to share with our audience that they can find you if they'd like to chat more?
Probably my favorite place is starcoachshow.com. So starcoachshow.com,
Yes.
you can connect with me, you can connect with all the resources, you can connect with April's beautiful episode that she did with us, and there's other places, but that's probably the best place.
I love it. Friendly reminder, if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, we now have all episodes on YouTube. It's on the Vixen Gathering channel, and Meg actually went to YouTube too, so you can see our lovely faces if you want to. So check us out on YouTube. Have a wonderful day. I love Meg's advice. How can you be kinder to yourself and give yourself more grace? And how can you love yourself more? So we will talk to you soon. Have a fantastic day.